Hey, this is Shaun with the Go Tennis Podcast, powered by Signature Tennis. Check out our calendar of Metro Atlanta tennis events at letsgotennis.com. And today is 10 minutes of tennis with world-renowned tennis coach, Australian in Puerto Rico, Justin Yeo. Today, we're going to talk about the Miami ATP and WTA Masters 1000. We're going to do a little wrap-up, chat about all the ways Justin was right. Maybe he was wrong about something, but we might never know. So, Justin, Sabalenka, you were right. Mensik, I don't think anybody saw that coming.
No, nobody saw that coming. Sabalenka just knew she was going to be bouncing back and pounding even harder after losing Indian Wells. It was a guarantee, absolute guarantee, unless she was injured. But even injuries, how do you lose from 2 sets and 40 minutes on a court, which is, half the time some of these ladies' matches are all over for her. So she was going to come through, I thought, and punish the field and get a revenge for Indian Wells. The young girl didn't make it all the way. But as we've had a podcast before, I said there's a new wave. We're going to see a lot of variation of ins and outs on ones and twos and top 10 and top 20. We're seeing a lot of movement on both sides. But that's the women's side. The men's side, exactly what I said. There's going to be a lot of movement. I'm not saying the R word with Djokovic, because I thought he was going to take out this title. He looked good. He looked fit. He looks really strong right now. But you and I mentioned it, maybe the strength of these young boys are they're faster and stronger and just that little bit quicker, and he's starting to feel it. It does seem to me like the days when Agassi was on his way out and Sampras was on his way out and Andy Roddick was on his way out, right? They would just seem to be over, like they just got toppled over and then eventually said, well, enough's enough. And that's what it sort of feels like at the moment with Novak. But man, that guy is determined to keep going, and he looks so fit. So that's why we'll see what happens in the French and Wimbledon and US, and I think that's what he's going to do. He's going to see out the whole year with Andy, give it his best shot. If he doesn't get a title, well, they'll reassess and then figure out from there. But Mensik, well, that's an interesting one. And the reason why I say it's an interesting one is we'll call him a boy. The boy admitted to withdrawing from the tournament before the tournament started. And in the end, because the referee was having lunch, he didn't hand in the form, got the physio to come out and work on his knee, and the guy wins the Miami Open. I mean, talk about some news right now. It's all over the news this morning. Oh. And if you go back, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years, no one would admit that you had an injury before you started the tournament, So that's coming out a lot now, because even, when Nadal had the foot problems at the French and he continued, everyone said he was having problems and everyone problems. It ended up being, he won the French with bad foot problems. So I don't know what that physio gave to this guy's knee, but he said that he struggled to walk or run on a treadmill with his knee and then turns around and wins the Miami Open. So that to me is something that should be talked about absolutely, because I'd love to know what that physio did.
Yeah, is that one of those backhanded self-compliments, though? Be like, well, I wasn't even thinking about playing this one because I was a little bit injured, but we all know how that turned out.
No, he's come out. He had the paper filled in. He was ready to hand in the slip and call it a day because his knee was that sore before the tournament started. And he announced it publicly in the speech afterwards. So instead of talking about all these accolades and everything else, he mentioned the story of how lucky he is to be right where he is today, right now, with a trophy, when he actually had the withdrawal slip in his hand. Mm-hmm. So he said he thinks his coach has got it somewhere, and they're going to try and frame that one.
Definitely.
So, but again, the story continues. We're seeing a wave of players coming in and out on the men's side too. So I think it's fun. It's interesting. It's going to keep the spectators intrigued and not sure who's going to show up on the day and who's going to come out and what tickets will be bought, because sometimes we used to buy tickets waiting for the final, semi-final, quarterfinal, or the final, because that's when the top three or the big three would come in and play, and you'd see the biggest best of 5 or best of 3 matches. Now, I think anytime, because now the draw, they're going to look for all these players that are just like, now everyone could shine and it'd be a good match to watch.
Well, that's my question. What does this do for tennis? If we say this is good for tennis, because
Yeah.
we don't just assume there's a Rafa Roger final. We don't just assume Novak's going to be there, or it's only going to be Sinner Alcaraz. You don't really know, and I think that's been a bit of what's happened to the women's tour, post Serena, where we what's going on. Look at, you said the young girl didn't make it through. You're talking about her Andreeva, who lost in, I think, the 4th round this
Right.
time, but she won the doubles.
Yeah.
So you do have the stars that are there. Coco's not going to win every match. None of these people are going to win every match. And that's my question. What does this do for tennis to say, okay, do ticket sales kind of spread out? Do the prices of tickets of the finals maybe go down? How does that affect the business? Do we even know? I don't know how that works.
Nah, tickets won't change. Pricing is pricing. It's a semi-final of one of the biggest stage. It's a final of one of the biggest stage, depending on the tournament. But I don't see that
Maybe
changing.
resales go down.
I don't see it changing. I just think where I'd say it's good for tennis is there's a wave of players all starting to shine. We can't seem to pick who's going to sit on top. Um, there is the controversy, though. Maybe Sinner could have won both of them if he was playing right now. So
Never know.
that could be probably, but at the moment, he's the only one that sort of has shown any kind of dominance over everybody, and he's out right now. So, and that brings more controversy. What was he doing? Maybe he was doing something that everyone's saying he wasn't, or he was, So there's a lot of weight going on in the news around Sinner, and that maybe he's got all these titles and he's dominating because maybe he's on something. But I don't know. It doesn't seem right to me. It seems normal that these are the things that go in and out of players. And I think tennis right now, we're seeing a lot on male and female in and out on the 10s and the 20s. And we're going to see 50s, like people in the 50s. Like, I mean, he was ranked 54, and he won the Miami Open.
Yeah,
So yeah,
unseated doesn't happen.
yeah. So I find it's interesting. I think it's cool. We've been for 20 years. We've been dominating with 3 players mostly all the time, and waiting for the finals to watch something cool, and not really watching the first round matches because you just
Right.
know the big stuff's coming at the end. And now you've got to be on and you've got to be ready to watch. So that ups tennis.com or tennis channel, because people are going to be looking for those specific names now that everyone's popping up. So I think it's tennis is in a really cool place right now, for me anyway. Because even as a Federer, I still struggle. He's not in the draw. He's not playing anymore. But I'm starting to get a little more alive now because there's so many players now to see and watch, and to see what they're delivering and how they're playing. The variety is huge. I think the one thing we're not picking up on enough, and the data is proving it, is how far they're back in the court and then eventually how close they are to the baseline. And then on top of that, what they aren't showing enough of is the height over the net and the height of the bounce, which is something that they should be trying to present to people, I think, because we're even seeing Djokovic hitting balls that are bouncing around the service box, but they can't attack them because it's got so much height and spin on it. So the variety is really coming out. And I think Andy's really picking on Djokovic to hit slice and take the pace off. So that's another interesting thing I saw in this tournament.
Yeah, didn't work out well for him in the final, but I think
It
a little
didn't.
more slice. I was looking at that the other day, looking at some statistics, and you had two guys playing. I don't remember who it was, and they were both 7% and 4% slice. And then the next match was Dimitrov, and we all know what that means, 38%. And you just think, are we losing that? And I'm probably 20 years. Because yeah, a lot of it's gone.
Yeah, well, maybe Andy's preparing for the clay or preparing for Wimbledon, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you've got to start working on it at the highest level to be able to know how you can perform it and work it. But I don't think I've ever seen Djokovic hit so many slice backhands. Especially when it was in his breadbasket in his zone, and he would take the pace off intentionally,
yeah.
which to me is definitely an Andy trick that they're working on. And you need to, how often does he get on that stage and practice that there? So, they've got to experiment in the zone at times. And that was one of the interesting things to see him doing so many slice backhands.
I agree. Justin, we're out of time. Thank you, sir. This has been 10 Minutes of Tennis with Justin Yo. Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Guys, have a good morning.